This is All India Radio. In the weekly program Current Affairs, now we bring you a discussion on government initiatives for promotion of sports and youth empowerment. The participants are G. Rajaraman and Rupa Ramani, sports experts. The discussion is moderated by Arjun J. Chaudhary, AIR Correspondent.
I'm joined in the studio by our eminent experts, G. Rajaraman and Rupa Ramani. Both are sports experts, and today we'll discuss on the government initiatives for the promotion of sports. Raja, warm welcome to you on the program.
Thank you very much, Arjun.
And you too, Rupa.
Thank you, Arjun. Happy to be here.
Raja, let's begin with you. You've been in the field of sports as a journalist for more than 20 years now. What perceptible change have you seen in the performance of sports, men and women, at the international level, especially under the present government policy?
I think let's take the last 7-8 years, Arjun. There has been a fearlessness that I can see in the athletic community. The younger generation is going out there to conquer the world. And even as we are talking, Teresa Jolly and Gopichand's daughter, Gayatri, they have made it to the All England semi-finals. And these are girls who are just 19 and 20, and they don't know what reputations are. They don't really worry about who their opponents are. They just go out and express themselves. I think that is the sea change I've seen. And I think credit to Abhinav Bindra, who won that gold medal in 2008 in the Beijing Olympics, and Neeraj Chopra, of course, in Tokyo 2020, a couple of years ago, winning that javelin throw gold. I think all of this, and we've done well in cricket, of course, I can see a fearlessness, and I think that is the sea change. And that has come because athletes know that they will be backed no matter what. When they go out to perform, their training, their coaching, they stay overseas, all is taken care of by the government. And when they know that they don't have to worry too much about how they're going to buy their next pair of shoes or get hold of a new boat to sail, I think they can then just focus simply on performing well, and that is what we're getting to see.
Rupa, what's your take on this? I think we've gone past the stage where just providing a kit to a sports person would be sufficient. There is a training program, there's backing by the government in the form of concessions and benefits. There is obviously the media that is covering these events because these are economically viable. What's your take on individual and team sports performance in India under the present policy?
That's a very interesting question, Arjun, because I believe there was a definite I'm talking about maybe many years ago, there was a definite discord between individuals doing well and, India doing well in team sports, because I think gone are the days when the individuals had to sort of train themselves. They couldn't rely on a lot of support from, any organization, whether it was the authorities themselves or government, and all that has changed now. We know, and we're all aware. Of course, Raja would know that much better than me, that there was a time when all these guys, including Abhinav himself, would talk about how he had to sort of put in his own efforts, he and his family, to sort of build a range and sort of practice day in, day out on his own. And I think that's where there was a bit of a discord when it came to glory in the individual space versus that of the team sport. But I think that's drastically changed as well over the years. You see the government sort of stepping in terms of encouraging a sport, whether individual or team dynamic sport, at the school level, at the sort of youth stage, which is sort of key because we are looking at building India to be that of a sporting nation. And for that, you have to go at the grassroots level, the next generation, so to speak, to kind of invest in them and give them that opportunity to grow and give them that opportunity to sort of grasp at whatever it is that they think they're good at and succeed. And that's exactly what I think the government has sort of succeeded in. And in sort of balancing out the difference when it comes to, okay, I'm going to give equal opportunities to everybody and give that opportunity to individuals as well as teams when it comes to the large global stage to sort of shine. And it's not just the government. There are a lot of private bodies and organizations as well who are contributing to that in sync with what the government has done over the last many years as well.
So self-reliance is something we saw from sports persons during the COVID period. But Raja, I'm trying to draw a distinction between Abhinav Bindra's interest in shooting and how his family mobilized the financial and moral support for him to ultimately win a gold at the Beijing Olympics versus someone like Neeraj Chopra, who won a gold medal at the Tokyo Olympics in javelin. Raja, can there be a distinction between the two approaches in terms of medal-winning performances, both individual and team?
Definitely not, because you go and look up the accounts on the National Sport Development Fund, which is run by the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, you will realize that Abhinav Bindra was also supported by the government enormously. Of course, his parents chipped in much more than most other parents would and gave him the best of facilities. But without government support, nobody was going anywhere. What has changed is a very spirited attempt and a very concerted attempt, Arjun, to get more people into mainstream. It is not just the champions, one or two, who are supported. There are a whole lot of them. The top scheme, the Target Olympic Podium scheme, for example, supports at least 100 athletes at this point of time in the elite level, and there are some 250 development athletes. So that's the cream of your country, definitely. And when you have this kind of support from the government, where they give you 50,000 rupees out-of-pocket allowance, Arjun, for the elite athletes, and 25,000 rupees out-of-pocket allowance for the development level athletes, it's a lot of money. And I have seen how people have struggled to get air tickets to go and compete overseas. The government is now taking care of all of that under the ACTC scheme, which is the annual calendar for training and competition with the national sports federations. I think they work in sync. There is a beautiful synergy that I get to see. What happened in Abhinav's case is that his parents had to support a great deal. But in Neeraj's case, from the time he emerged out of the National Inter-District Junior Athletics Meet in 2012, he has been supported in national camps. 2015, he finished 5th in the national games and got into the national camp. And then from there on, there's been no looking back. But without government support, Arjun, elite sport is going to struggle, especially in Olympic discipline. Tennis, you make money as a professional, but that's probably one sport. Golf also, you make money. But other than that, without government support, Indian Olympic sport will come to a standstill.
How do you rate the Khelo India competition for youth development in this country as a platform to showcase their talent and maybe also bring in a medal at the international level? Raja.
I think, Arjun, Khelo India as a scheme, and it encompasses a lot more than just the games that we see, the youth games or the university games. Khelo India also includes the development of infrastructure. It includes a lot more than just the Khelo India games and the scholarship that they give to a whole lot of young athletes. I think there are about 2,000 athletes who are supported with scholarships that go up to 10,000 rupees a month. That's 120,000 a year. And with 2,000 and more athletes being supported, you are actually looking after the future of Indian sport. Those who have risen from the grassroots, those who have been discovered by national championships, and then are taken into the Khelo India fold. I think it is brilliant, the kind of monetary support that athletes get at an early stage, and it is very critical.
Rupa, we have seen that government policy initiatives coupled with media coverage has been very important for the success of any sport. The Doordarshan Network and All India Radio have always been the backup when it comes to that kind of coverage where private sector initiative is missing. But you being a part of the broadcasting community, how important is the private network, especially when it comes to the economic viability of the sport concern? Take, for instance, the precision sports like shooting or, for that matter, archery. How do you see the private networks participating?
Obviously it plays a part, when you're talking about certain sports. Like you speak about how the role that media plays, the role that certain sort of components that are outside play in the interest and the growth of a particular sport, it becomes a little critical. But just to sort of, follow up on certain aspects that we're talking about, we are talking about a support system in place. We are talking about, certain policies that have come in and not just keeping in mind a particular sport or a particular sort of association or the way the sport has to sort of move forward. It's also about the way we think and how we need to probably change a few things in our mindset when it comes to making this more a viable option in the years to come, in the months to come. I mean, we do know that, with all the sort of push that other sports is getting right now is massive. And the fact that cricket has always been in the eye of the fan, whether it's the private sector, the broadcasting teams, and all of that is always there. And that the boom happened again, thanks to a moment that is probably coincided with something like the IPL that came about. Commercially is what I would say. But, the push that other sports is being given right now by government is massive right now. And I think that's where we are looking at some sort of a breakthrough year in some sense is what I would see this year to be. There's a lot that is being done, and the government also sort of in accordance and pushing for something like this to happen, whether it is the IOC meeting that has to happen in India here, all of that. I mean, everything is sort of playing its part in pushing and sort of giving that impetus to make this sort of a breakthrough year for us in some sense when it comes to off the field and what it can do to sort of push sport and sporting achievements.
Raja, what's the importance of the National Sports Code and how it's being enforced to discipline federations, and they have the responsibility of overseeing their respective sporting disciplines?
I think it's a very important document. It's a compilation of notifications and directives to various national federations and the Indian Olympic Association. It has to be followed in letter and spirit by every federation and perhaps even at the state level. Even though sport is a state subject and the government keeps pointing this out, it cannot enforce the code at the state level. It's very important that it does that through the national federations and ensures that there is a level playing field for everybody and that we create a very safe environment for our athletes to perform and encourage more and more to come in and play sport and do India proud.
So isn't it a matrix system of answering to a higher authority where you have the Ministry of Sports and Youth Affairs and the international sports associations or federations that have a say in how the national sports federations are supposed to conduct themselves, and in turn also ensuring compliance by state and local federations therein?
Arjun, great question. There is a dichotomy here because the national sports federations owe their allegiance not just to the sports code and to the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports in India, but also to the international federations, and all of them have to comply with the Olympic Charter. The Olympic Charter is very clear. I think even the government understands that and tries to find a way in which everyone comes together on the same page. At the end of the day, Arjun, it is about India doing well internationally, and sport is a soft power. The Prime Minister has been talking about it for a number of months now, about how India needs to do better in the world of sport. We have done exceedingly well in Tokyo. It's the best performance from an Indian Olympic contingent. The Paralympics was no less. We have been doing better and better, but everyone knows that we are not in the top 20. And to get there is a lot more work that needs to be done. The government is aware, and I think they're trying very hard to impress on the national federations that while they owe their allegiance to the international federations, they have to comply so that India moves forward as one.
Rupa, let's get back to you now. How important are access to sporting infrastructure and facilities, both for conducting competitions and for broadcasting coverage? Do you see that enlarged in scope or with restrictions right now?
Obviously, the fact that India hosted, the Commonwealth Games, the Youth Olympics as well, there are a few sort of big cities in the country that can boast of a very strong infrastructure. The fact that you are sort of also hosting a lot of international teams when it comes to certain sports, especially the capital in Delhi and, of course, Pune and a few other cities when it comes to certain sporting disciplines, does have a very, very good infrastructure in place. There is, of course, scope always to sort of enlarge it and make it a little more proficient, functioning in some sense. There's always scope for that, but the fact that the government sort of took charge when it came to these aspects, there's always been a very good infrastructure in place. You can't have complaints. There would be nothing, to complain about when it comes to international level infrastructure for sure. But that also is a process right now. There's a lot of things that has to come in. It's not just about the facilities of the players training or where they're performing or where the match would be. It's also the surround infrastructure, the hotels, the streets, making it a little more viable in terms of a community sort of coming in there and playing those tournaments, playing those matches. So that is the ultimate goal. The government is very aware of it. Everyone who's involved in this process is aware of it. And I think they were working towards this. It's already a lot of things in place, and there's much more that is in the pipeline, as we know.
Raja, the national games were in jeopardy, but Gujarat managed to host it after a gap of many years. How was that possible? Then we have Bhubaneswar, which has been actively involved in both individual and team sport hosting as well. Delhi, for instance, is right now hosting the Women's World Boxing Championship at the IG Stadium. How do you see the central government's initiative in ensuring that our competitions meet global standards?
The central government has invested a lot of money in ensuring that international events come to India. There is a massive support system in place. Enormous amounts of money are given to national federations to conduct international events here. And I think it's important. When you get to see heroes come in and compete in India, there is a very good chance that some kid will get inspired and want to play sport. We get to see a lot of international events on television. We get to see European football, for example. We get to see Formula One racing. We get to see some golf and tennis, besides cricket, of course. But it's essential that by organizing more and more and different varieties of sporting events, we had the Asian cycling last year in Delhi. By hosting more events in India, there is a good chance that we will inspire a whole new generation of youngsters to take to sport. I think more states need to take a leaf out of the book of Gujarat, out of the book of Odisha for sure, and conduct more and more events. I think it's important that they take ownership of sport, at least at their level, so that India then becomes a force to reckon with at the world level.
So if you look at a team sport where a coach and support staff are extremely important to mobilize the kind of performance we've seen, like in hockey, for instance, cricket clearly is commercially very viable, so we find the best of the best there being hired to do their job. How do you see that spreading over to individual and other team sports?
I think without government support, many athletes will not get their best coaches. Take Neeraj Chopra, easily the most recognized Indian athlete at this point of time. He's got a biomechanics specialist as a coach. Dr. Klaus is from Germany, and the government is kind of paying his salary. So it's not just him. There are so many athletes who have got professional coaches from overseas. The hockey team, both men and women, have got a number of experts from overseas, coaches, physios, trainers, masseurs, analysts. And without this kind of support, without about 25, 30 overseas coaches coming in and helping the Indian teams and individual athletes, you're not going to find the kind of result that we've had. Take PV Sindhu, she had Park along with her when she won the Tokyo Olympic Games bronze medal or the World Championship medal. So it's very critical that we appreciate the fact that government has spent a lot of money in getting the best coaches for our athletes here.
Rupa, what's your take on cooperation and coordination with the sports federations and the local authorities when it comes to hosting and conducting competitions?
Obviously, it's very, very important because it's not just about, one set of facilities or whatever in place. Everything that is supposed to come at the international level, trickle-down effect is essential. It's very critical and there has to be a synergy there. I mean, that's very obvious. I think that's the reason why I think certain cities or certain states, like we were talking earlier, when it comes to international level sports, always steps up when it comes to certain disciplines, Bhubaneswar for hockey or Delhi for a lot of other sports, whether it's Calcutta or whether it's here. I mean, so many avenues for the associations to naturally sort of have a synergy in place when it comes to conducting of an international event. Best scenario would be every sort of sync coming into place with associations across the different disciplines across the country. I mean, that's a massive dream for any country. It's not just India, for any country globally. I think there's always going to be ebb and flow. There's so many things that are happening across various sports, whether it's football that happened just recently or other, sporting disciplines, which is going through an ebb and flow, and it's always going to have that bit of a push and pull. But I think for this to sort of sync up, it is the massive role that government plays also, and which it is sort of attempting to do through all these Khelo games or everything else, encouraging everyone to sort of come under one sort of system to have that synergy in place. Because if there is that dream of hosting an Olympics, which is what is the ultimate dream, all of this are little components that has to fall in place and click.
Well, my observation about the Women's World Boxing Championship, which is being held at the IG Stadium in New Delhi, is that you have parking facilities, refreshments, access to security, and the events are being held according to a schedule, and of course private participation as well sponsoring the event. The television coverage is there. That kind of synergy that you are mentioning, are we seeing a broad-based application of that across competitions?
I'm going to cite something that happened many years ago because I have covered sports in India, obviously largely cricket over the last 5 years, but a lot of sport in India. And I remember many, many years ago going to a particular stadium for a practice session and covering the practice session. And there was not a woman's bathroom available, probably locked up thinking there wouldn't be anyone around there while men are training. Look, it's something very basic, but the fact is that now we come a far distance when it comes to certain things. And to be honest, Arjun, I think the sort of facilities that is there, especially like what you just said now, absolutely spot on. The ambience, the vibe, the energy, the sync when it comes to whether it's broadcast, whether it's people, the organizers, the players themselves, the kind of comfort and ease they have, they experience, especially in Delhi, like you were mentioning right now when it comes to the boxing competition. It's incredible and it's world class. Recently, when the badminton tournament was on, we went and watched a few of the matches that we could go in between our schedule, and it was fantastic. The energy, and there is a crowd involvement. They are coming to see this. Also, it helps that when they put that the price of tickets is nothing or it's free entry, all of that is important because ultimately you are also not just talking about it being a TV-friendly or a spectator-friendly sport, but also spectator-friendly when it comes to the sort of atmosphere right there for people who want to get involved. Like we're talking about inspiring a country, inspiring, more athletes to come in. This is what you need. You need that to be viable to spectators across, especially even in person, to sort of go there and experience that sort of an environment. I think, yes, that's the sort of synergy I'm talking about. And it will happen across a lot of other sporting disciplines as well. We didn't envision Kabaddi, for example, to take off the way it did. And there's a reason why they sort of reimagined the way it would touch everybody, considering it was an ancient sport, which had its own limitations and which they sort of rebranded and reimagined. I think that's what we are sort of working towards, and we are seeing it slowly sort of coming up and realizing in various sectors. And that's the future. Absolutely.
Rupa, what's your take on women and sports now? I mean, you drew a comparison between what it was like earlier and just in terms of facilities. But what about women and sports now? How do you see them benefiting with the attitude that's changed?
I think when we're talking about this fearlessness, right, briefly at the start, and there is that word that keeps coming up when it comes to a certain sport, when it comes to especially India, when it comes to women for sure, that has to be there foremost, because I think even for someone like me, and I have to bring in the personal to sort of project onto a pan-India sort of comparison when I talk about women and sports, especially from the Indian perspective. We had to think twice. I played tennis professionally, and I had to think twice just wearing a short skirt and going for practice. I had to sort of go wear something, change, and then think about, okay, what will people think? People are saying, okay, is it even a sport? Is it going to give you something? Oh, you're doing it just for hobbies. I think all that has sort of changed. And the fact that the government too, in sort of pushing, the role that they play, for example, in pushing a women's Premier League, which is taking center stage right now, obviously financially a great start and much, much more to go, which will happen. I think that itself is telling to the public, to everyone, that this is important. It is just as important. A WPL is just as important as a men's Premier League. And that's a step in not just cricket. It has to happen in other sports, and it is. I think a lot of women athletes if I talk about women athletes, I will not talk about cricket. Even though we now are talking about WPL and all of that and the impact of broadcast and everything happening, commercial success happening in women's sport, I will talk about the women athletes who did us proud over the years. Someone like a Sania, someone like a Saina, even before that, Karnam. I don't have PT Usha. I don't have to even talk about. There's so many. I'm going to be missing quite a few if I say that. I think those are the kind of people we look up to, and that's the sort of inspirational journey we are seeing. There's a long way to go, but that fearlessness, which was there in pockets, is probably there in droves right now. And the push that the government also is giving, along with a lot of other bodies involved in the commercial success of any sport, is what's playing a pivotal role in making this also a distinct sort of possibility and a success.
Well, Raja, you've had the benefit of 40 years watching the landscape of men and women's sport in India. What's your take on women's sports now?
I think it's improved a great deal. From the time Kamaljit Singh Sandhu won the first gold medal at the Asian Games for India in 1970, to PT Usha, who picked up a clutch of medals in 1986, we've come a long way. We don't have an athlete of PT Usha's caliber, but we have come a long way. There is no doubt about that. But what has happened is we've had a number of champions emerge across different sports. Rupa mentioned Sania Mirza. Before her, there was Nirupama Vaidyanathan, who played and won a round in the Grand Slam. She was the first Indian to play a Grand Slam for a long, long time. There have been others, Saina Nehwal, for example. Mary Kom, how can we forget her? She's got more world titles than very many others. Across sport, women have done well. The wrestlers, for example, the Fogart sisters, they ushered in a transformation in the landscape as far as wrestling is concerned. There have been a number of champions we've had, and we have celebrated them. But I think the critical difference now is that the government is, through the Khelo India scheme, not the Khelo India Games, but through the Khelo India scheme, is impressing on a number of federations to conduct women's leagues at different levels, at zonal levels, and then do an apex competition. I think when you get to compete more, you get to perform better, and you understand your strengths and weaknesses better in competition. And I think that is what the government has done. And this will pay us dividends in the future. We cannot expect immediate results, but I think this is a great move where you will see some positive results emerging.
Rupa, you've been a former sports person yourself. Just briefly, we talk about government policy influencing performance across the board, but as an individual, what are the incentives or motivations that you were seeking from state support or from the private sector in order to perform? Because an athlete or a sports person's longevity is quite brief when it comes to playing sports professionally.
Well, yeah, I think that's slowly changing as well. I think we're talking about longevity. Yes, that's slowly changing. I think the fact that, the whole fitness aspect is a marked sort of a tale of transition in itself. We're talking about women sort of coming up and more women coming up and sort of changing the landscape in Indian sporting history and here on. It's also about fitness. Yes, longevity has also the fact that also has sort of increased considerably. But I think it differs from sport to sport, Arjun. You know, when you're talking about support and support from government or certain other sectors, it vastly differs from, discipline to discipline. I'm talking about a sport like tennis, which is, let's be honest, a very expensive sport, far more expensive than a lot of other sporting disciplines that we can come across. If you want to talk about it, a good racket is anywhere between 3,000 to 20,000 rupees. I think it starts there. I think you need to have sort of keep at it. You need to get sponsor support as well. I mean, the government can do just that much in terms of trying to support and encourage so many athletes across so many disciplines, across so many states in the country. After that, there's also little additional support that they have to get. I think it's a lot of other things sort of coming in place, clicking in and sort of making magic happen, right? And that varies for every sport. The fact that the government realizes it, the fact that these guys are realizing the difference in what each sport sort of needs and what sort of support in which sort of area do they need is something that probably was lacking back then when I was playing. I'm talking about many, many years ago, but now all that is changing. You have so many avenues, so many opportunities, which is in sync with, whether it's association with the government, whether it's different sectors, whether it's the, independent sort of giant organizations that are also sort of pushing their might behind certain players, who's then again in sync with the Khelo schemes, the Khelo India Games, to sort of do well is all sort of something that is those little things that comes together. So yes, I think it's all of these factors that sort of required, and it differs from sport to sport. But yes, things have changed from the time that I sort of played professionally.
Raja, what's your take on corporate social responsibility?
I think it's critical that this whole concept of CSR, we need a greater understanding is what I mean, Arjun. And it's crucial. Only last week, the president of the Athletics Federation of India, Dr. Adil Sumariwala, was saying the profit that the top 25 companies make every year. If you get 0.25% profit to the federations, each federation will have 45 crores a year. And that is the kind of money that Indian sport needs to get better. But increasingly, there are a handful of corporates who have come into sport, who have just dipped their feet and are just about feeling their way around. We need more money, not just the government. I think corporates need to support. But at the end of the day, Arjun, everyone starts playing sport because they're passionate about it, because they love it. I think many forget that it is the passion that drives them. They keep looking for this extra incentive from the government. They'll keep looking for that 10 rupees extra that they can pick up from the government. Between the athlete, the federation, the central government, if there can be greater synergy and if everyone is focused on winning for India, I think we will have a lot more medals in the future Olympics.
Well, Rupa, we understand government social responsibility. What's your take on corporate social responsibility?
Oh, massive, Arjun. Like I've been saying, and we sort of realize this as well. It's impossible for system and this environment that we are all sort of dreaming and yearning for, that sporting culture. It's impossible for just one body to sort of keep pushing at it and do whatever they can. And that's essential. The government sort of realizing this, which they have, and pushing for this to get that spark and leap across to the next coming years, the next phase, has been amazing, and that's important. But the role that the corporates play, whether it's JSW, whether it's Tata, whether it's Reliance, anyone else who's sort of getting big into sport, and not just to those who've already done something in the field, to those who are yet to do it, recognizing talent, doing some scouting, keeping up camps, setting up teams in rural areas to sort of support those people who have that spark, who have that passion, but don't have the means to do it and probably aren't reached by all the sort of schemes and the games that may have missed sort of some talents here and there. I think that's where it's crucial. Some of them have, of course, realized it, but like Raja said, yes, it is something nascent. I guess it will sort of take a little more time in sort of syncing that up and getting a process in place, but there is that interest. There is that sort of investment in making this also something that will sync up to what our ultimate goal is. I think everyone's goal is the same. The process is different. The players are different. The routes are different, but it all leads up to what we want, right? Glory at the international stage, and for us to be a sporting culture which makes all of this possible and much easier for people to come and for the next generation to sort of look up to and take it forward.
I just want to add one thing, Arjun. Every corporate wants the biggest athlete. Everyone wants a Virat Kohli or a Neeraj Chopra or a Sindhu or a Saina Nehwal or a Mary Kom. Go to the grassroots. You will find plenty of talent there. That is where the future lies. And that is where investment opportunities or sponsorship opportunities exist for a number of corporates who don't have the big money to pay the stars. But yes, you will get great visibility if you start supporting grassroots sport.
Well, I would like to thank both our experts, G. Rajaraman and Rupa Ramani, for being with us on this program and talking to us extensively, not only about government social responsibility, but also corporate social responsibility and how government initiatives will ensure the future of India and Indian sports. Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on government initiatives for promotion of sports and youth empowerment. The participants were G. Rajaraman and Rupa Ramani, sports experts. The discussion is moderated by Arjun J. Chaudhary, AIR Correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.